A lot of the driving in the market is coming from Trump-based announcements or strategic reserves or, all this kind of news. I think that will continue for a period of time, and I am very much thinking about how positive and how bullish it can be over the 4-year term.
The appetite for meme coins has grown so much. Like, are we going to see a rotation into, strong fundamental projects, categories like layer 1s, layer 2s, DeFi?
As Bitcoin moves towards its all-time highs, you're going to see more of that. I'm as bullish on altcoin exposure, I would say, since the last bear market, with the caveat that a lot of alts are still, even after this recent pump, they're still down 70, 80%, 90%. Some of them are still down from their, all-time highs.
G'day guys, welcome back to another episode of Tapping Into Crypto. We're back with another exciting week this week, and what would you have it? Pav's not here. The great Tommy, the Irishman himself, is back.
Thank you very much, sir. Good to be back. It's been a while.
Yeah, and you've come back and just kicked me out of my own seat.
Yeah, well look, sometimes we have to assert dominance, and this is kind of my only way to do it in the podcast room, so here we go.
The audacity of the man. But listen, look, I was speaking to Pav on Friday. We were having a few beers after work, and he was telling me how many gains he's made on the crypto market last week, and conveniently he's just not in today. Like, I know you made a comment he might be at the Lambo dealership. Yeah,
it's pretty interesting market at the moment, and Pav has been speaking up a fair bit, so yeah, maybe it's a strategic trading day for him today. That's the optimal trading day is the way I call it. But
like that.
We'll see. Hopefully he gets well soon and is back here to join us next week. But
gets well soon. It's inverted commas.
Hope we haven't retired him.
Yeah. But listen, today's angle, or today's episode angle we're going for is: are we hanging up the Maccas badge, or not quite yet? Or the Maccas apron, whatever you want to call it. I know you spend a bit of time with the Maccas.
Oh, look, I think a few of us had the Maccas uniform ironed and pressed ready to go a couple of months ago. It seems to have turned around pretty significantly in the last 2.5 weeks-ish, I guess. After Bitcoin bottomed in brackets, yeah. I guess in the kind of mid to low 70s. Feels like we're a long way away from that now. Like, it feels like almost like a completely different market. The vibe in the market's completely changed. We've been looking at things like the fear and greed index, which I believe went like into the teens a few weeks ago, or last month. Now we're back up in the 70s from that respect. So yeah, look, it's always been a 180 shift in the last 3-4 weeks, you could say. Well, the Maccas uniform is definitely not put away completely, but it's definitely we've closed the shelf on it just for the moment.
It's not being given away, but it's just been put.
Oh no, definitely not. You never give it away.
But listen, on this, so we're going to do a bit of a recap on what's happened, why it's happened, how we're playing as well, and also touching on are we back? Like, is the altcoin season finally here that we've been waiting for so long? And discussing what we're going to see next, or what we want to see next for an altcoin season and a crypto bull market to play out. So let's get straight into it. First of all, we'll recap the market. So Bitcoin, I think the end of last week, or maybe over the weekend, hits over 100k USD. So we'd been sort of trading between that 90 to 100k mark for a while, but we'd never cracked that 100k mark for at least since January this year, or maybe February. But finally we hit it. And why did that happen? I think the main reason for that happening was when Trump announced a trade agreement with the UK. So it was a big deal. Trump has announced his tariffs, which are going to affect every country, but he's perhaps spoken about it to great lengths. Like, it's now about the art of the deal and who's he going to make deals with, negotiating. Then following that, we just saw yesterday that Trump met with Xi Jinping from China, because that's been the sort of main focal point of this trade aggression. And they've announced that they're going to reduce the Chinese tariff to 30% from like 145% for a 90-day period. So I guess like optimism is driving this market, that we're now in a more like sort of fruitful economic conditions that's going to drive sort of more volatility, and that obviously feeds down to risk on assets like crypto. Did I miss anything?
I think you covered off pretty well, and I'm just remembering now the last time that I came on the podcast, which was quite a while. I think it was just post the like Trump getting in. It was probably just early in the new year. It's been a while. Jesus, that's almost 5 months. Sorry, mate. But I think
Every week I try and get you on, and it's always a different excuse every time. So
turn it up, man.
you're lucky. It's not here today.
But I think we were talking about at the time. I think I'd said at the time was, what's the impact of Trump's reign going to be over the 4 years, as opposed to what's the impact going to be over 3 months. People in crypto, right? Look, everyone looks in the short term. Everyone's always thinking about what's happening today, tomorrow, and next week. It's all very short term thinking. We need to try and move away from that. I know, I've been harping on about it for a long time. I know you guys are here too in podcasts. It's something that when you think about the tariffs, like it is, even when it got announced first, we always thought it was going to be a short term lever that the US would pull. That seems to be the case now. So I think the rest of the market is starting to realize that, and we've already seen this type of uplift. I think Bitcoin hit at its max close to 106k US in the last few days, which is huge. We're talking about 3-4% from all-time high, which is can't say the same thing about Ethereum, but it has recovered pretty significantly over the last few days as well. So I think all in all, going in the right direction. I'm still very much looking and thinking about, Trump is doing a lot of the driving in the market is coming from Trump-based announcements or strategic reserves or all this kind of news. I think that will continue for a period of time, and I am very much thinking about how positive and how bullish it can be over the 4-year term, as opposed to what's happening this month or next month. So yeah, that's kind of, I guess, the way I'm thinking about it at the moment. I do think, and I tweeted about this myself and then posted on my LinkedIn about, we've moved past that bottom or that bear market period. I do think it feels different in the market. It feels like the sentiment has shifted. I mean, it has shifted. It's not a feeling anymore. How long it lasts, I mean, look, we know about these markets. We know how volatile they are. We know not to get ahead of ourselves. We also know not to get too down or too upset when things, when the market does correct, because that's just part of a general cycle. We still have to remember we're still in quite a nascent and emerging market. Sometimes we think we're maybe a bit more grown up than we are at times with respect to how established and how mature the market is. Market will tell us pretty quickly when to check ourselves. I think, so
I want to call out what you said earlier. So ETH, something that it's been asleep for the last sort of 12 months, hasn't it? And we've been like just wondering like what's going on. Is it like no longer competing for that second spot? Like, is Solana going to overtake it in terms of usage and then also in market cap? But it has come back, and typically what we see is like ETH will drive an altcoin rallying, right? And so ETH's up like 20 or 30% in the last 7 days, which we haven't seen volatility like that from ETH in a long time. I can't remember the exact time, but it's been a while.
Even when the market was pumping earlier in 2025, 2024, 2025, Ethereum wasn't putting in the double-digit gains that all the other assets were. It was just really sleeping, and I think there's definitely been a shift for sentiment on ETH as well, which is number 2 asset. It's always going to drive a bit of volume, a lot of ETFs and these things formed around it. So I think it's really exciting for Ethereum holders.
Yeah, and a few other things to call out as well. So XRP has flipped USDT for the 4th position. So
has that been done before? Is that the first?
Yeah, it has been. I think it's gone as high as position 3 in the last 12 months even. But obviously, when markets, come down a little bit, USDT typically outperforms because people are keeping their money on the sidelines, as you would know, Tommy. But what else? The meme coins have been absolutely ripping. Like I know Moodang,
and Sudadex
has been one of the top performing top performing coins just in general.
Yeah, it's done like 600 or 700% in the last 30 days, which is absolutely insane.
So Moodang is a baby hippo.
Checks out. It makes as much sense as anything else.
Lee's giving us the indication that it's up
762%. What did I say? 700. That wasn't too far off. Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's our good producer Lethal Lee, who's given us some fact checks.
Yeah, but I think in general, the altcoin recovery. Look, altcoins were smashed. Let's not even pretend that most people's portfolios were down 70, 80, 90% with altcoins for a long period of time. Even when we saw the recovery, we never got close. In many assets, we never got close to coming back to where they were in the previous cycle. So I think it's been really hard for altcoin holders for a long time. I think this latest resurgence it definitely breathed a bit more life in. We've seen the Bitcoin dominance drop slightly, only very slightly so far, but Ethereum leading out that charge potentially is a bit of a signal in the market that we might see recovery. But some, you call it Moodang and some of the meme coins, some assets are up, 6, 7 to 10x from where they were even a month ago. So it's definitely a positive sentiment there with respect to altcoins.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to touch on what you were discussing, around Ethereum and Bitcoin dominance in a sec. But the other thing to call out, and it's what's happened in the last sort of week or two, is Coinbase stock has entered into the S&P 500. So that's like the biggest companies in the US.
Yeah,
and it's basically the first crypto company to do that. So I think it's up 11% or something like that in the last week. So obviously pretty major milestone for them.
Yeah, I think it's huge. I think it's slightly been underplayed in the media a little bit so far. Maybe we'll see a bit more velocity around it in the next few days. But I think it's absolutely massive for a crypto company, Coinbase, being kind of the first stock exchange-based crypto company, US-based. I think the S&P 500 gives you a lot of inherent volatility. It gives you a lot of inherent value. So people will invest in the S&P 500 to get that full suite basket of stocks, of assets and equities to invest in. So, probably thinking about Coinbase, should you be looking at Coinbase as an investment? It's kind of like another kind of hedge against everything else, or it's almost like a diversification play now where people that are not necessarily interested in crypto are getting some level of exposure because Coinbase is now in the S&P. So I think that's a huge story, actually. We might hear a lot more about that in the coming weeks.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Coinbase follows a similar trajectory to the crypto market as a whole in terms of its performance. But yeah, probably has less volatility than a lot of those altcoins. So yeah, I think it's like a play for some people looking to get exposure to crypto. Yeah. But the next statement I want to touch on is, are we in an altcoin season? Because there's a few things to look at here, and I want to break it down with you. I know Pav was really keen on this section, so unfortunately he couldn't be here. But historically, when we see an altcoin season, we see Bitcoin as the first to run, right? And then as, appetite for risk starts to get a little bit higher, people start rotating their gains from Bitcoin out into altcoins. We'll typically see Ethereum because it is the second biggest. Obviously, it's an ecosystem for a lot of crypto projects and altcoins and then so on. And then I guess risk appetite gets more and more to the point where we're seeing, meme coins and then even further tiny cap altcoins on these tiny decentralized exchanges and stuff. That's when it gets really silly, and you probably know things are getting a bit too out of hand. But look, we've seen ETH up, I think the least said 30% in the last 7 days. So what do you make of that? And as well, Bitcoin dominance is down a couple of percent, meaning that it looks like either some Bitcoin is being rotated out or just money is flowing into altcoins rather than Bitcoin as a whole.
I think, I'll address Bitcoin first. I don't necessarily think people are rotating out of Bitcoin yet. I think what people are probably doing is, the old argument about, Bitcoin is now too expensive.
Yeah.
So what they're looking for the next one. So Ethereum's already had its lift, I guess, to a degree for an asset of its size. It's had a decent uplift. I think you said 30% or so in the last week or so. So I think people are looking for the next thing. They're already starting to look for the next thing as Bitcoin moves towards its all-time highs. You're going to see more of that. Are we in an alt season? Jury's still out, I think, on it. But I think where I'm as bullish on altcoin exposure now than I have been, I would say, since the last bear market. So that's probably, as good of it, as big as an endorsement as I can give it at the moment. With the caveat that a lot of alts are still, even after this recent pump, they're still down 70, 80%, 90%. Some of them are still down from their, all-time highs. So when you look at Bitcoin being 3-4% away from its all-time high, you look in Ethereum, I might get Lee to check me on this one, but I believe Ethereum is still down 50% or so from its all-time high. Right. A lot of ground to make with respect to its all-time high price, which I think, you can't always set your watch to it going back to an all-time high, but definitely making some ground in that. So there are some of the key things I'm looking at. If I'm holding an altcoin, how far away from its all-time high am I? Where do we think, if Bitcoin hits 150k US, where do we think the recovery lies for, respective altcoins?
Yeah, and I think as well, I just touched on before, meme coins are the ones that are outperforming the market. And why is that the case? Why does back in the day, it used to be meme coins would be the last, even after NFTs and gaming and all that. Now it's the first to run out of all the altcoins. So it's are we now just seeing the appetite for meme coins has grown so much Like, are we going to see a rotation into, strong fundamental projects and like, categories like layer ones, layer twos, DeFi, what else we got? AI tokens as well. Like, when are we going to see that?
Honestly, I think we will. I think we'll see that rotation happen at some stage in this upper end of this cycle. I think people will, for want of a better term, like flee to some safety or flee to some security, whether that's within an L1 or if it's just Bitcoin, and then we see the dominance towards the end of the cycle start to ramp again. People that have been in it for a while at least are gonna want to protect some of the potential gains that they've made.
Yeah.
So how do you do that? You either go back to cash or you rotate into something that you think is more stable, has more long-term store of value. Bitcoin is kind of the obvious one. Then people look at things like Ethereum, they look at even Solana, they look at Sui and projects like these like layer ones that have a big community, big story and a strong narrative behind them. I think that's where I see it. Meme coin volatility is just what people chase. That's why. Yeah. Why are people going to meme coins first? Meme coin narrative has been massive throughout the last cycle that we've been in. Huge on Solana, huge on a couple of other networks. Meme coins just grab the attention really quickly. And they grab the volatility quickly. So you're looking at, we're just talking about a Mudang, I think that's on Solana, I believe.
Yeah, it is.
Like 700% over the last 30 days. That's going to grab some attention, right? People are going to talk about that around the barbecue or on the dinner table or whatever, conversation at the pub, wherever people are having the conversations. That's what's going to get them not Bitcoin is up 12% in the last week. So like it's the whole like sentiment and human psychology aspect of meme coins, I think, is what gets people in. But the more mature trader or the people that are kind of been around a cycle or two will always look at, and this is, we're going to touch on what we're doing at the moment, I think, soon, but that's exactly what I'm looking for. Like, how do you use these assets as tools to acquire more Bitcoin? How do you use them as tools to acquire and get stronger positions in some of the more long-term conviction assets that you like?
Yeah, to touch on like the layer ones as well, I was looking at some on-chain analytics to see there we go, ETH 67% down, all-time high. So still,
I think I said 50, so I was still 17% off, right?
Yeah, that's still with a lot of ground to make up. But layer ones. So we're talking, you mentioned Solana, Sui, you've got Ethereum as well. We've also got my base is a layer 2, but as like a chain, we're also looking at that to see what's getting the most activity, right? And Solana's basically destroying everyone when it comes to active addresses and also daily transactions. Then for position 2 is actually being competed for by Sui and Base chain. So Base is the Coinbase layer 2 on Ethereum, but it's interesting because Sui has been outperforming Base in basically all those metrics. But now that we've seen this sort of like meme coin craze come back, I think Base is more sort of in tune with that narrative than Sui is. I mean, Sui might so it might become more of an ecosystem for meme coins, but at the moment it is Base.
Yeah, isn't that something we always look for? Like, what's the next trending L1 that's going to start launching meme coins? And you see the pump.fun type of scenario again, where you just have a ton of coins launching daily, and then the trench traders are in there kind of picking one after another on a daily basis. But
well, it's about capturing attention, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Especially when like more of the retail markets coming in, and they meme coins are easy to understand, as you said, like the people are chatting about them at the the dinner table or at the hub. So yeah, but interesting one. So yeah, like Base chain, whether it can maintain this sort of relevance, particularly as we go on, will be interesting to see. But for the time being, Solana is killing everyone, and their daily transactions is trending upwards. So I think that just goes to show you that I guess it is like getting more and more heated in terms of an alt season.
The ETH killers are coming, you reckon?
Potentially, that's the potential. I'm just calling it now though. I don't think I'm picking up the Maccas badge for at least a couple of months. That's my prediction.
That's enough runway to have a bit of comfortability, which is not bad.
So. Yeah, exactly. I'll still be eating Maccas despite.
Just before we touch off the all season, I do want to call out a key upgrade for Ethereum as well.
Yep.
So Ethereum has just gone through a Pectra upgrade, which is essentially an ecosystem upgrade for Ethereum. And I won't go too far into the details, but I think the key call out here is some of the main features are focused on improving Ethereum's scalability, staking efficiency, and overall user experience. Quick quiz question for you, Ted. What's the worst thing you hate about Ethereum in the bull markets?
Paying extraordinarily high fees, and they're very slow.
Yeah, so good thing you called that out, because they've now created, as part of the Pectra upgrade, smart accounts, which essentially enables gasless transactions in some wallet types. There's also social recovery and transaction batching features, which is pretty cool for the average user. It will mean reduced fees, it will mean no fees or gasless transactions, and an enablement to actually use the token that you're swapping, if you're doing a swap, as a gas fee token as well, which is different. Previously, you needed an Ethereum wallet. If you're swapping to Solana, you need Ethereum and Solana. Now, potentially, you can just pay in Solana token as a thing. So that's a pretty key upgrade for a retail user. And then with respect to the staking upgrades, it's basically, you know, previously you needed 32 ETH as a maximum account per validator node on Ethereum. Now they've opened that up to 2048. So it basically means, as an institutional staking business, or even as a person with a bunch of ETH, if you've got more than 32, you can actually extend that from 32 out to many gore without needing to set up a separate validator. So it's pretty key for people that are staking Ethereum, key for the ecosystem overall from an institutional staking perspective. And hopefully it'll mean like higher rates for users and things like that in the end, where some of those efficiencies are passed on.
They're like pretty cool. So I'll be paying less fees in terms of transactions. Does that also mean I can get my money back for all the fees I paid in 2021?
Yeah, you could possibly buy it. I could probably, you probably put a down payment for a nice house if you got all your ETH transactions. Yeah,
it's ridiculous. Right?
That's one of the scams you always seen going around Twitter. It's like, click here for a refund on your ETH gas fees. Have you seen that one?
That's I can imagine
Imagine the amount of gas fees. I can remember people paying like $100 USD for a $500 transaction back in the day when you're trying to use Uniswap and you're trying to use some of these platforms. It was out of hand, wasn't it? Really.
Now, times have changed a little bit, and I guess that's why we've seen chains like Sui and Solana.
Yeah, so I think Ethereum had to get into programs as that. Yeah. You know, a lot of criticism on their foundational team over the last 12-18 months on just not reading the room, I would say. Like, you've got a long-term roadmap that seems to make sense, but not reading the short-term, knowing your customer, knowing the kind of market that you're in. I think that's where they've copped a lot of flack. So I think some of these upgrades are addressing some of the shorter-term pain points that users of Ethereum have had.
Yeah, I mean, on-chain analytics I spoke about before, like ETH's not even in the conversation for like the top daily transactions, right? Because people just still find it too expensive, too slow. Like, whether that will improve with this new upgrade, I'm not sure. But like, they obviously are desperate to try and get people to back on the platform to use it rather than like, I mean, they want people using layer 2s as well.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're the second biggest crypto by market cap. They have the most total value locked by far, but they're just not getting that like daily.
That's right. Yeah. I think Ethereum, last point on Ethereum is still the massive internet machine, right? That all the apps are built on top of, primarily all the apps are built on top of. Yes, they need to work on usage. The economic security point around Ethereum is probably its key value prop at the moment, like the most amount of value locked, as you've mentioned. It is just a huge ecosystem that's really what they have going for them. So they need to, hopefully with some of these upgrades, they're starting to address some of those, right now pain points that a lot of users have.
We'll wait to see.
Let's go,
All right, Tommy, I want to know how you've played sort of in the last week or two and how you look to play the next couple of months, and what, if you have any recommendations of what not to do.
Yeah. So I kind of touched on it a minute ago, but using the, if you have altcoins in your portfolio, using those, some of them you're going to have in there not as 5-year holds, right? So I think identifying those, writing down in bullet points a list of those assets, monitoring those on a daily basis, a weekly basis on what performance look like, especially if we get double-digit, treble-digit gains like we've touched on when we're in a real alt-site season or recovery happens. If you don't have high conviction on those, what's your plan? Are you going back to cash? Are you rotating into Bitcoin or another asset that you have high conviction over? What am I doing? I'm definitely rotating back to Bitcoin most of the time. I do also I do a lot of staking of some of the assets I have, like with Ethereum, with Solana, with Sui. So I do stake most of my kind of L1 assets to do offer, proof of stake rewards.
Just passive revenue in the background.
Yeah, so I'm often building out that portfolio, as well as Yeah, because get it. That's my way of banking some profits. Very rarely going back into cash these days, if I'm honest. Like I haven't done that for some time now, unless I needed to pay something specifically. Like the last time I did a big rotation back to cash was when I needed the mortgage, the down payment for the house. So look, that's primarily, like, it's pretty simple. I'm watching the charts all the time. It's part of our job working at a crypto exchange. But I guess pretty simple strategy, waiting to rotate any high gainers. I'm kind of dollar cost averaging out into those as well. So I don't have specific price points. I'm just kind of looking at the moment for what's an asset that's up 50% in the week versus Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And then rotating a lot of that profit into Bitcoin. I'm never exiting my positions completely, even when I think we're top of market. I very rarely completely exit, but I might reduce back to 5 or 10% of what my portfolio value was at any given time. So that's kind of, that's roughly how I'm doing it at the moment. What about yourself?
And I think in the same vein, I dollar cost average in and I dollar cost average out, right? I'm not one of these guys looking at the chart, looking for the absolute perfect place to buy and sell, because I know timing market is gonna
That's right.
ultimately beat timing the market, right? I took some profits on like Sui and Sol, but I'm talking like 5%, right? And I actually withdrew this into cash because I'm in a life situation where I am in need of more, liquid funds. But otherwise, I'm not selling my Bitcoin, I'm not touching my Bitcoin, because I see that as, a 10, couple of decade plus play. Yeah. But I think I'm just sort of understanding that things could go up a lot further, and that's why I'm keeping majority of my a lot of skin in the game. But at the same time, profit's profit, right? And so I think taking shares and profits off the table, meaning you're guaranteeing yourself for some success in the long term, right?
Yeah, I think people always think it's going to keep going up, right? And this is like learning from, this is my third bull market, my third cycle now in crypto, and first cycle I made the mistakes, second cycle I made the mistakes, I'm in the third cycle now, and I've seen myself make mistakes, even though I know exactly what's going to happen, not from a market or pricing perspective. From a sentiment perspective, you get very similar triggers, but your brain or your body or your brain or your actions don't allow you to actually make the right decisions. So I think something that the guys at Ben Simpson, the guys at Collective Shift do really well is like work with people to put that strategy down on paper and get something that's super tangible. And I've used them as well, and it's helped me a lot. And not to be shilling out that Collective Shift on this one, but it is a key call out. I think that's something, just getting a strategy. It doesn't have to be a complex or a perfect strategy, but I think, I'm pitching myself here now, or tapping myself on the side of the head at times to go, let's not make the same mistakes. And I think for me, that is understanding the market's going to go lower than it is right now. It's likely going to go higher than it is right now. You just don't know. So I think FOMO is something I try and avoid. I only buy exclusively, and this is something I've talked about a lot in the podcast over the last 3 years, is I exclusively now buy only on red days. So I'm buying into sell-offs only, exclusively. Selling into strength, it sounds simple, but as you look at the Bitcoin meme, the whole the desk of people buying Bitcoin at 78k being empty, and then the 105k being full, a big queue for people to buy. Yeah. It's very easy to say it, but it's really hard to do it. You do you get FOMO on certain assets. You see the mood hangs up 700%. You go, I'm going to buy it, it's going to go another 700%. Usually when it's ran like that and people start to talk about it, you're due for some level of a cool off. Obviously not always the case, but it's something that so I guess it's a trading behavior now that I've adopted over the last, I would say, cycle and a half, and something I kind of follow up pretty religiously.
That's something. Well, feel factor is so hard to the only way to actually learn it is to experience it. Yeah. Because it happens the same in a bear market, right? When everyone's telling you this is a scam,
it's over,
this is over, and everything's been down for months on end, and it's like, well, this is historically that will show you that that's the best time to buy, but everything's telling you not to. And then same as you said, when it's things going great, everything is in the green, you have that FOMO, oh, I could capitalize on this even more, but
it's hard, and it's not, I talk to people that I'm sure you guys do as well now. You have a lot of experience in the market. You talk about people about what should I be doing, and my message is just super simple. Every single time, it's that message. Just don't follow the FOMO. Don't get dragged into it. and make sure you are DCA and taking some kind of profits as needed into whatever the assets are, whether if that's back to fiat for you or back to AED or whatever currency you use, that's totally fine. But not continuously thinking that, oh, we're going to just keep going up. It's up 100%. It's going to go up another 100 next week and another 100 the following week. Like, it is going to pull back. So you will get an opportunity to buy. Don't let people kind of rush you into the market if you don't want to be in it. And then the other side of that is, when the sentiment goes down to the lows and nobody's talking about it, and the fear and greed index is down in the teens or single digits again, probably at times to start thinking about what your positions look like long term there. So yeah,
Well said.
nice.
Well said. So
Nice.
well, we might leave it there. Tommy, I believe you're coming on next week.
You right, kid? Well done. Yeah,
Don't give me another Tommy excuse.
I'm booked in. It's in the calendar, so no, I'm keen. I'm keen to come back on next week. I've got a few other points around the product side and some things that we're seeing there to cover off next week. So I'm excited to do that.
So then hopefully Pav is back from his little holiday.
The trio.
Coach, I mean, you're on the front cast of this podcast, so it only makes sense.
I gotta be catching up to you. That's all right.
That's all good. And then we've got a couple of really interesting guests coming on that week, so we'll have that scheduled in for the weeks following. So, so a really good month planned, and then hopefully things are great.
Love it, Matt. Thanks again.
Cool.
That makes it out.
Appreciate it.
See you guys.
Bye.